It's your time, and you've come along to this, so hopefully we can get something from it. I do believe we can, and the reason I believe is because I am like you guys, or we are the same. We are a part of a team. I instruct, I go to the gym, I love the industry, and I see a lot of people here today, and you'll probably see me, walk in, go in and do the activities because I enjoy doing it. So my role here is to try to impart what I've learnt and what I know, and hopefully that will help you with what you guys do. But in the end, you guys are actually the experts. You're either learning or mastering your field, and I don't know a great deal about that, but what we'll cover today, hopefully a component of that you can integrate into what you do, and then that will be helpful. So a little bit about myself. Other than being a part of our team, Team Elixr, I was the guy at school who, if you asked about Star Wars, I knew everything about it. But if you asked how to spell a word, I had no idea. So spelling is not my strong suit. I have really good application in a few fields, but if you ask me about something else, I probably just smile and nod. But we're going to go over a couple of the things that I've been working on with Richard's help and Elixr's help. And so the topic we're going to discuss in the next 25 minutes is exercise safety. How is an exercise safe? What makes it safe, and what are we looking for? Okay, so what are we looking at? We're looking at an exercise. When somebody comes up and they would say, "Oh, I'm not sure, can you help me? I want to do it safely." What is it they're asking you to do? Well, to go straight to the point, are you actually going to damage tissues? Are you actually going to put some type of a strain on a muscle, a ligament, or a nerve, or a bone, or a disc? And so that's basically what we'll be discussing over the next 25 minutes. And I'll jump through very quickly. I won't hold on any one point. If you have any questions on that point, feel free either to raise your hand there or grab me afterwards. But the three points that I hope to convey is, one, that injury, pain, or altered motor control can damage tissue. Two, understanding stability and mobility and how that works in the equation is probably helpful. And three, integrating some of the knowledge from the McGill's approach on lower back pain will aid you when it comes to to clients who have issues related to pain of the lower back. Let's move on. So, as I've discussed, injury, pain, or altered motor control, each one of those can actually injure a muscle, a ligament, a tissue, or actually do tissue damage. The science is out there, and you can damage tissues by doing an injury. That's almost common sense. You can damage tissues by being in pain and trying to exercise, and then that will lead to an injury, which again is common sense. And the last one is if you alter movement patterns, if you are looking at somebody in your class and for whatever reason they don't look like they're doing it right, they run a very, very high risk of tissue damage, either through compensation in the movement or through loading. And we're going to go over that now, but that's one of the points we hope to get across. Injury. Injury is tissue failure from loading, either fatigue or peak. I'm going to convey this point. Somebody would say, okay, what's an injury? And the example I use is a 1,000 kilo weight on a bicep, drop it from a meter, I'm going to tear the bicep. Or a 1 kilo weight, 1 meter, drop it 1,000 times, and I'm going to tear the bicep. So whether you fatigue load it or peak load it, you're going to eventually overwhelm that tissue. That's important because as a clinician, people will come in and say, I've been doing nothing except sitting all day. And the sitting all day is the loading, the low fatigue loading over a long period of time that actually gets them. We're going to cover that more, but let's just do this. Hey, this is just a bit of humour put into the presentation. You're looking at his bicep and it's about to tear. Whoa.
Come on, man.
We'll just see 2 more examples, but again, his left bicep tears. It's the left bicep and it's on the first movement, just there. It just tore. It goes on, but you get the point. That was a peak load, too much load for the tissue compromised, gone. That's easy to understand. We start off with that because when people have fatigue loading, sitting poorly in a chair, then try to bend over and grab the shoe, and you've probably heard of this, somebody tries to pick up, all I did was pick up a pencil or bend forward, but they're off the back of 2 to 3 months of just sitting at work, constantly loading and fatiguing that tissue at a really, really low grade, and then they put a little bit of a peak load through it. It might be a lift. They may come to your class. They've come to your class for a year, but in this one class, they hurt themselves and they said, I don't understand. My back went. I've done this 1,000 times. It's not what they did then. It's what they did leading up to them that actually loaded the tissue. The tissue failed. What is load? Load is just a mechanical force that we put on people. A peak load, we just saw the bicep collapse rather dramatically. Then the fatigue loading. Here, in the bad position, in particular, the lumbar spine has been loaded. And incidentally, the numbers on this, from lying down to that posture there, or slouched in the sitting, you multiply the forces in your back 4 times. So from lying to standing, it's only twice, but from standing to sitting, there is twice the amount of force going through your back in that orientation. And what's worse is that there's no blood flow there. So as a result, there's no perfusion of tissues. We can't recover very quickly from it. So that's a fatigue load. Oh, this is it under tensile strength. All tissues, all materials have that particular property. The reason I put this in is because towards the end of the presentation, we will be talking about it as it applies to the lower back. Now, pain. Pain alters motor control, or it alters the way we move. A very easy example of this is if I put a nail in your shoe and you try to walk around, you're not going to hurt the foot that the nail's in, you're going to hurt the other side very quickly. You'll compensate a lot, and sooner or later, the tissues will fatigue on the other side. You will compensate. Now, the reason I keep bringing this up is because as instructors, you are in classes, and when you see somebody do a movement that isn't quite right, they're doing exactly that. They've altered their motor control, and they're compensating very hard on tissues that are loading in orientations they were never designed to load in. They will compensate, no doubt, but sooner or later, that's going to break that side. So pain alters motor control and causes motor control. Ooh, let's have a look. Sorry if I'm getting in people's way. It's just a great video. I don't know if you have these people in your class, but if you do, it's so nice to see them in the class, but they do need your attention. They need attention. It's like seeing the person who's running down the side of the road, and gee, they look like they're doing it hard. You take your hat off to them because they're doing the work, but they need a little bit of advice on maybe scaling it down just a tiny bit so that it's a little bit safer. You see that? No touchscreen. So altered movement patterns will cause injury. An altered movement pattern is what you see in your class. And to be honest, if you don't like it for any reason, the movement, does my head move well? No, I just didn't like the way the head turned slightly. It's an altered pattern. And as a result, you're loading tissues that were not designed to do it. So that was the first point we were going to cover. And now, videos are pretty cool. People like videos. So we're just going to watch. You can't hear the guy doing it, but he's making a non-manly sound and actually doing it. Everyone's laughing at him. This is a guy rowing without I don't even know that he's actually got the handle. Everyone has seen this in the gym. Whether it's a bench press or a lat pull down. There's about 10 more seconds. I just want to. There's a really cool machine. I actually had a patient ask me about this yesterday. She said, I'm doing core training, I'm holding a weight up like this. He goes, but it just really hurts my shoulders. I go, I think it's the next one, and then we'll stop this video and move on. Actually, it's the next one after this. This is, I think, the, I don't know what machine this is, but he's definitely not doing whatever this machine was designed to do. I'm just going to stop it. No. Let's move on. As soon as So, reiterate the point. Injury, pain, or altered movement, it doesn't matter which one of those it is. They'll all cause tissue fatigue, failure, and it's an interesting point because it's something you can talk to individually with any one of the people who come up. Why am I getting injured? Why did I do this? How do I get better? Now, people will ask, what's the next step from here? You have to have enough muscle energy in any activity that you plan on doing to be able to support the bones, joints that you're doing. And if you can't do that normally, you're going to compensate. And if the energy designed to be able to do your normal movement goes outside of the spectrum of activity you're going to do, you're going to injure. Or if what you're doing plus compensation, you don't have the strength, mobility, or stability to do this activity, you're going to injure. Now, it's not in the scope of what we're here today to try to figure out exactly how that applies everywhere. Suffice to say that if somebody asks what happens next, you either get rid of the motor control and do the activity well at a lower level, no doubt, or you improve your body, the joint movement, the flexibility, or the stability, so that you can accomplish this at a date later and increase your range of activities. We okay with that? Yeah. Pilates-based model, mobility, stability, strength, endurance, power. To be honest, that's the same model for everything. And I'm going to summarize the point of stability and mobility right now in about 2 minutes. Stability and mobility. If I am doing a movement and I'm able to do that movement, it's considered that I'm functional for that movement. If for some reason I am unable to do the movement, let's say it's a handstand and you see my handstand and it's wobbling all over the place, is it a stability issue or is it a mobility issue? Now, if I had a 12-year-old here, you would agree that their joints should be quite mobile. And if they can't do a movement, it's not because they can't move their joints. They just don't know how to do the movement for whatever reason. And pain shifts and disrupts patterns. But if I have an adult here, like people you use in your class, and they can't do the movement, I don't know yet whether it's a mobility issue or a stability issue. And to give you an example that I thought of today, if I were to stand on one leg on a tight wire and do this sort of a thing, my ankle can only move so far. If I move it any further, I'll fall. Now, in this case, it's no longer a stability issue. It's the fact that my ankle just can't move. And if it can't move and I'm shifting forward, well, then my knee has to move, my hip has to move, and my arms have to move. If my ankle doesn't turn to the left and I'm falling to the left, well, as opposed to just shift my ankle, I'm going to throw my arms up. So whether your clients have a stability issue or a mobility issue, beside the point for now. Address the mobility, because if I had a 12-year-old and they could move very well, all I have to do is get them, keep coming to the class, and eventually they'll get it. But if I have a 24-year-old and their ankle doesn't move, and I'm standing there saying, put your arms in, chest back, stand up tall, and they're still doing this type of movement regardless of what the activity is, until I actually mobilize that ankle, meaning until I put stretches on it, until I increase the range of motion, I'm not going to get anywhere with it. Are we okay with that point? Yeah. It comes a lot out of the direction we're moving as a team for Elixr through our trainers, and understanding how mobility and stability applies to every one of our members and every one of the people in our classes. I just summarized it in that one point just to save time, because we've got about 10 minutes and we'll get on to how it applies to a real-time exercise. All materials, as we covered earlier, have breaking points. With the spine, if I fully flex, fully extend the spine without the aid of your muscular stability, 5,000 repetitions with a 65 kilo load, but that's most people, and this is going to break. That's regardless of, that's a normal spine, no injury. 5,000 full revolutions, and 98% of these spines are going to break. And that's undisputed. We can put a spine, put the weight on it, move it like this, and at 5,000, let's go have a look at it, broken. So somebody will come up and they'll go, I do this all day. Okay, that's fine, you do that all day. And for most people who have the muscular stability and mobility to do that, you can absorb some of that strain. But if you are a back pain patient, knee or ankle or hip, you've switched off some of those motor firing patterns, or if you are cautious of your back for whatever reason, then you now have to take on board what science has told us, and that it's not 5,000 times from now. Your back has already injured. You've only got a very limited amount of material there that can absorb that, and unless you have a muscular bracing system to support that, and that's what we do here, it's just a matter of time before that back goes. If you want to do the full flexion and load the back, then you're going to fall in the 98% of people whom the fatigue loading is just going to catch. Are we okay with that? Yeah. So coming out of, let's have a look. We'll have a look at this video. I'm proud of this video. It took me 3 nights to 2 a.m. in the morning to make this video happen, so I'm going to show it to you. This video is a spine. It has a disc in it. The disc has a jelly-like nucleus, anatomy, 101. When I flex, or when the spine flexes, you will see what happens to the nucleus as it comes out of the back of the spine in this model. This is the person who already has back pain. If somebody comes up to you and says, I have back pain, there's a 1% chance they actually did a muscle. If you tear a muscle, it's a ripping sensation and you did something really fast. But most people, if they've got back pain, they've hurt their disc somehow, and that's these people. And I'm pretty sure a percentage of the people here in the room either are that demographic or know that demographic. So let's have a look. Oh, seamless white background. So there's the disc, the jelly-like substance in the middle. The little red there is a tear in the posterior fibers, and that white stuff coming out is the jelly, the nucleus, every time you bend forward. Just there. But if you put straight compression down on that disc, it doesn't come out. Bottom line, if if you train to a neutral spine, you can load this back and you will not push the nucleus out of the posterior fibers of a back. If someone has back pain or is cautious of back pain, flexion-based activities, especially full flexion, when their muscles are not able to absorb that, is going to do that to their spine. It's going to sensitize it. It's going to keep them in pain. The reason why the biggest prognostic indicator for injury is previous injury is because if you flex a sore back, you do that to the back. Are we okay with that point? Because that's my third point. Flexion in a back pain demographic is not the best. Muscular bracing is required. For all other populations, you are welcome to do your normal activities to try to improve it. However, if you are cautious of the impact of the posterior fibers of the disc, then modify how much flexion you put into that particular person. Which brings us to the big three. Now, relatively quickly, these are the big three exercises. This one here is an abdominal curl where just the head and the elbows come off the ground 1 centimeter, no more. Otherwise, you run the risk of putting that disc there into flexion. The knee is bent to take off neural tension. And someone who is outside of the first 5 days of traumatic injury, I'm inflamed, I can't move. Not appropriate, but from 5 days, the subacute phase onwards, very, very appropriate. Somebody comes in, I have to exercise. Why? Because I'm OCD, and I have a gym membership and I don't want to freeze it. What can I do? This is what you can do. A big three exercise. And Richard's Elixr, we're going to send you this photo. You can have it on your phone. You can look at it. You can send it to members. Hey, I just wanted you to what can I do at home? I've just had a baby. I hurt my back. I'm coming from a knee injury. Well, here. What's your number? Send. And that's it there. This works the anterior chain, the front. This one here works the lateral chains. Now, just a point about this. There are many, but the point that it makes this important is that if I were to do an abdominal curl and rotate, you see people do, I'm working on my obliques, I want them to sort of pop out. And they go, so that's me, that's why I'm doing oblique work. I go, okay, how much load are you putting through the spine? I don't know, but I want my obliques to work really well. This exercise or activity matches an abdominal curl with obliques. So the benefit of it is that you create muscular bracing in the lateral component of the body, the quadratus lumborum, any of the psoas groups, external obliques, these muscle groups, without putting the spine into flexion. And you saw from the video, when you go into flexion, the nuclear material comes back. When you stay in neutral, it doesn't. So we can build stronger backs by doing the side plank. And the last exercise we have there, quadruped, Superman, bird dog, however you want to use the terminology, is designed for the posterior chain activity. That's the back. The spine has to be kept in neutral, but we put an amount of loading through the back equivalent to the compressive values set by the National Institute of Safety Occupational Health. And that's important. So people go, have a look at this exercise. It's really cool. It works my back. And you see somebody grabbing a medicine ball and their feet are in there, they're throwing themselves up and back. And they go, wow, that's awesome. I really feel it in my back. I go, yeah, you do. And they go, well, is that good or bad for my back? I said, well, according to the big guys, big studies, the American guidelines for how much compressive load you can have in your back without being lawsuited, and those guys love lawsuits, is about an equivalent ratio of newtons just above that. So this exercise comes in just underneath that. So for many, many reasons, these three exercises cover Anterior, lateral, and posterior chain, they come in underneath the guidelines, but most importantly is they keep or can keep a neutral spine. So the 3 points we covered. Pain, injury, and altered motor control, these will all lead to fatigue loading of the tissues. The photo of the 3 boxes, Richard's going to send out in an email. You have it. At least you can look at it and maybe remember 1 or 2 things about it. Stability versus mobility, go for the mobility. If someone, for whatever reason, can't do an exercise, it looks wrong, as opposed to coaching them over and over again, say, hey, you know, maybe we should have a look at, do you move well? Is a joint appropriately moving? Because if it's not, you're going to be there forever trying to get this movement to work. And the last one is that with a lower back, you must keep it in neutral. Otherwise, for a lower back member, you do run a high risk of re-injuring that person by either peak load or fatigue loading. Does anyone have any questions?
Yes. Can you demonstrate that, the one where you just literally do it?
Yes.
You said you
Yep.
bring the head off the floor a millimetre? Is that what you said?
1 centimetre, yeah.
Yeah, and do you tip the chin or do you...
No.
So wouldn't that work a lot through...
Yes, yes it does. It's a relatively calm move, and I'm going to demonstrate it. It's actually not going to look very spectacular because we're going to move about this far. But if you try it at home, what I want you to realize is if you place your hand on your stomach when you do the movement, you'll feel anterior engagement. And that's all we're after. Now for the demo. So I've bent one leg so that I've taken off neural strain. Place the hands underneath the back so that I keep my back in neutral, or at least help it to keep into neutral. The elbows come off, and this is an option. I can either go elbows off or just head off, but I'm going to do both. Elbows come off, and I lift the head 1 centimetre up, which is about there. And then go back down. Repeat 20 times. You can, and it makes no difference which one you do unless that person has a bulge on one side, and you'll know because they go, the pain's on this side. Then bend that leg so that the tension on the nerve is removed. Yeah. The overload principle is as such that if you can't do it very heavy, then do a lot of it many, many times. So for that exercise, say 20 times, do it in the morning, do it the middle of the day, and do it in the evening, because it's not a strength activity. It's just a neural engagement, switching back on of the motor groups that stabilize the anterior chain. It's not a strength exercise, so you can do it over and over again. It's like signing your name. You go, oh, how many times should I do that? Well, it's not a strength exercise. You can keep doing it over and over and over again. Question?
Is there a specific order that you should do the big three?
No. However, this one here, the side plank is a difficult version because some people have shoulder issues, and you're stabilizing in an area that most people are not used to. So if you take, say, a 12-year-old girl and you say, let's do some push-ups, well, generally, as a generalization, you could say their upper body strength is not the best. I can apply that same principle to the wider population. We do a lot in flexion, quite a lot, very capable. Not so much in extension, but we do very little in actual side activation or the lateral chain. So not really, but you would start with the abdominal curl, then the quadruped. Those two are probably the easiest to instigate. Then the last one. But they're called the big three. If you can get all three of them, it's quite good. There are versions of it. The versions you see up there are the intermediate versions. You can make it easier by just taking away either body parts, changing stability requirements, one arm as opposed to arm and a leg, change the timing so that my arm's not out there as long. The recommendation is about 10 seconds to hold, but if you're only out there for 1 second, so be it. There's no point, there's not that much point in terms of the amount of circulation that goes through the body to hold longer than 10 seconds. But from a conditioning point of view, if you wanted to add, say, quadruped and move the arm or sweep the arm back in and out just to add repetitions and load, then it changes the intensity of the activity.
If someone has low back pain, if they keep a neutral spine, is deep hip flexion an issue? One of the styles of yoga we teach here, Ashtanga, involves some significant hip flexion. And I'm just wondering if spinal flexion is bad. Okay.
If the spine stays in neutral, then if the only thing we're interested in is the posterior loading, the nucleus coming out, and to be honest, that's most of the cases, we are excluding things like osteoarthritis, degenerative disc disease, joints that have slipped, nerves that are being compressed by bony structures. That's not very common. The most common is just, I've got a bit of a bulge in my disc. Yeah. So if they've got a bulge, if you can hold a neutral spine, then hip flexion is independent of that. However, that's not to suggest they don't also have a hip flexion issue, like they may have arthritis of the hip or, a inability to hip flex. So if it's just the lower back, then no, that's fine. But if they have others, then you'll have to guide them through it. Any questions? Richard? Wow, thank you for allowing me to present to you guys today. Oh, you're welcome.